Welcome back to planetzoo, Hertfordshire Zoo edition. On today's episode, we're going to be building an enclosure. Nearly couldn't get it out then. Building an enclosure for the little penguins, which I'm really happy about because we haven't got penguins yet. So you may have seen when I was building the entrance that I put some glass panels in here, and this is going to form part of the barrier for the penguins so that they don't go into the staff area. And yeah, it's going to be similar sort of build to the sea lions, if I can find them, just down here. So we're going to have like an area for them, and we're going to have like a big concrete area for them to come out and swim in. So this area here is going to be concrete, and we're going to have like little bits here so that anyone on this can see them on the monorail, not the monorail, on the 4x4 experience, they can see them. And we're going to have the footpath coming round here as well, and you'll be able to go inside of this bit to see them inside. That's the plan, at least. It could change halfway through, as most of my builds tend to do, but yeah, we'll see what happens by the end of it. So enjoy the episode, and I'll leave you alone. Goodbye for now. I'll see you soon.
Well, what an introduction, may I just say. As you can see in the speed build, I actually had to edit the terrain quite a bit, and that was because I couldn't get the concrete blocks to line up the way that I wanted them to with the water. So I ended up having to make these squares and this ramp for the penguins, because I wasn't too sure how the deep water worked with penguins, because I know on some of them you kind of need to have an entrance to the water and then the deep water. But I worked it out eventually. Now I do actually get rid of this flooring quite late on. I wanted it to kind of make the water look more blue, but it wasn't really working the way I wanted it to. So that does go, and quite a lot of this wall actually goes as well, and I ended up having to duplicate a lot of the wall. I think I've done some accidentally as well, but that's neither here nor there. And the reason why I've done this is because whenever I've gone to penguin enclosures, they tend to be in a obviously man-built enclosure compared to something a bit more natural. So I ended up putting in the concrete around the outside to create an illusion of like a swimming pool kind of thing, and put in this flooring so that the guests can enter the habitat, and essentially would be able to walk around if this was real. But unfortunately you'd need to put pathing everywhere, and pathing in this game causes issues, as you may well see. I then added in this part of the flooring, which I ended up getting rid of because I didn't like it. I thought maybe it would be a place for them to walk over, but I quickly realised that they don't actually walk over the flooring, they kind of clip through it, interestingly. So I got rid of that quite quickly and moved on to creating the rest of the habitat. Now there is a lot of terrain moving, flattening, rebuilding, etc. in this, so apologies if you don't particularly like that side of things. But I wanted to show this one because it's probably one of the better ones that I've done recently. I actually really like the way that it's come out in the end. And this rock formation actually ends up going later on. The reason being is the glass does not stop water. The only thing that stops water is barriers and terrain. Now what I could have done is put in a barrier and adjusted the water from there, but I didn't think about it at the time, and I ended up having to get rid of all these rocks and adding in terrain. So I got rid of the path, added in terrain again, then done the water. So it does kind of cut off here. But I really like the way that it looked beforehand. But as you can see, I do have some trouble with the water. To do the actual enclosure, or the hard shelter, I really considered what I wanted to do. Again, trying to go with like the waves and the curves and the Australian sort of Oceanian look. Oceanian? Is that the right word? But I ended up coming up with this horribly angled white and wooden building with some glass or some greenhouse features on the front. Now, I will be the first to admit that this is actually quite plain, and I would kind of like to add to it, but I don't really know what else I can add to it. So if you've got any ideas, please feel free to let me know in the comments on how I can add to the actual building itself, because I'm really happy with the way that the habitat came out, but the building itself I think is lacking some detail, which again you'll see in the end. So I've tried to stick with the white theme as much as possible, because I feel like when you go and see penguins, particularly in zoos, they're always in like a white building or a rocky building, and I didn't want to add another building of rocks, because even though they look good and they're somewhat realistic, there's a lot of building and it's a lot of the same click 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 click. So I tried to sort of do something a bit different, and I think actually this comes out looking a lot like the rhino enclosure from what, maybe 20 episodes ago. Very similar. And I tried to recreate the curves on all the sides, but I ended up getting rid of that in the end, I think. Or maybe I kept it. I think I got rid of it because the angles weren't quite working for me, because I adjusted it off grid. So I think I ended up going with just a curve on the regular side and flattening out the building, and then adding in the barrier to which the penguins will stay behind. But I didn't really like any of what I was really doing, so I added in this as a template and then put in this driftwood and used different sizes and different thicknesses along with some glass to make a barrier between the people and the penguins so they don't run out. I think I ended up adding some like leaves to the bottom of it to try and make something that wasn't just glass and wood. It came out okay. It's not the best, but again, like I said, I couldn't really think of anything else to go in to the hard shelter itself, so if you do have any ideas, please let me know. But that wasn't the focus of this build. The focus of this build in particular, which we will be coming to shortly, is the viewing area and the overall guest experience, I guess you could say, I guess you could class it as. Which I end up adding more flooring to the outside and putting in a guest gate, because guests can enter this particular enclosure with this particular animal. So I've put in a talk point and I've put in some area for the guest to enter. I then got rid of more terrain and added in a barrier, which took a while for me to sort out because it wasn't quite going where I wanted it to. And this is will be the underwater view, which even at the point of recording this, which is a few days later than I originally planned, I don't think anyone's actually gone down there yet, other than I guess myself when I do the exploring view, which is a shame really, because I think it's actually a really, really good view. But the way that guests work in this, they probably won't ever go down there because there's nothing new for them to see and it's too far away, so I might need to add an exhibit down there so that it pulls them down. And as you can see, I was struggling a little bit with the pathing because I wanted it to be a square or a rectangle, and it wasn't quite working out for me the way that I wanted it to, but eventually I end up settling on pretty much what you see here, adding in the terrain that I've had to get rid of because you can't place stuff, and then add in the underwater part. Now, I got rid of the roof again with the terrain because I wanted to add in the plaster walls around the outside without any issues, because working underground on this game can be quite difficult. I then went back in and added the floor because there's no easy way of doing it, and I raised the floor slightly, I believe, so that it wouldn't look so rubbish. Put the roof on so that it's not just dirt. I had to take it off in the end because the dirt ends up clipping through the roof, and this was quite difficult because of the 4x4 experience being where it is. It wouldn't allow me to place terrain back again, so that took ages for me to put back together because I couldn't remember what button to press because you have to do the station and it's all a bit convoluted. But eventually I ended up adding in the 4x4 experience again, and I think it looks better now because it tilts towards this particular enclosure as well as the lions, and I think it goes a bit closer to the crocodiles, so you get to see a bit more on the 4x4 experience, which is moving a lot of my guests around more so they're not all congregating at the entrance. And just to change it up a bit, I added in these rocks, and I do end up adding in a sign and putting in a bit of personality on the sign by putting the underwater view area, so that, again, if you walked in real life, you'd know what was going on. But you can maybe see how difficult it is to work underground because you can't clip through the ground. So if you get the angle wrong, it's all over. But you can see there's a lot of walls that I'm putting in. Probably could have managed it better by maybe not having this built completely at the wrong angle to the grid. But I didn't realise at the time, and at that point I'd already committed. So didn't really want to start again, and I think it was looking okay. And then I added in that part of the wall so that I didn't have to add anything unnecessary and have a load of pieces that I didn't particularly need, and just to make it look a bit more fresh and a bit more real, I guess, I added in this planted area, which I think is somewhat realistic. You probably would have some planted areas around, maybe downstairs, to assist with oxygen circulation, and just for another area. Oh, did not know that I left that. Oh yes, of course, yeah. So I had to get the sizes right again and move it because I think the plants hadn't come across. There was a reason why I saved it. And learning my lesson from last time, I turned on all of the lights before duplicating them. And of course we had to add power because there wasn't any power there. There's the solar panel and the staff area. And of course we have to cover it up because why would you not want a staff area? Doesn't really make a lot of sense. As you can see, even though I said I learnt my lesson, clearly not. It doesn't duplicate with the settings. So I had to go in and turn them all on again because it gives me a headache if I don't. And here I'm just duplicating the work that I've already done to eventually add on a roof and put in the pathing for our guests. Now the roof, again, I feel like I've gone a bit basic and I maybe could have done something better. But when you look at penguin enclosures, they always look kind of very similar to, I think, what I've built here. So I'm not overly mad about what I've done. But again, I do think it could be a little bit better. So I'll await your kind comments to let me know how I could have done better with this building that I'm currently inside of. I do end up adding a more secretive place for the penguins if they wanted to go in and not be seen by anyone, in the corner, just to add something a bit different. And for this particular build, I didn't actually add my own custom barriers because this was probably about 6 or 7 hours worth of work in total in the end, and by that point I just did not have the will or desire to make my own barriers and then try and fit them in and make them perfect. So I ended up adding in the wood barriers, which I still think actually look really good, and I think they're perfect for what I've actually built. It fits the theme and still looks decent, and for once the mechanic actually has something to do in this area or across my zoo in general. I think you can actually see the points where I've given up in some of the pieces. I don't know why I made these climb proof, but not necessary because they don't climb. But I did go around the whole thing and, of course, make it all uniform because that's what it's about. And this is the finished product.